There's so many aspects to sort of understanding and mastering comedy in storyboard. You have things like composition, staging, timing. I'm not talking about any of that today. I think those are things, technical aspects, mechanical things that you can analyze, you can find things you like and try to study and understand why they are the way they are, why you laugh at them, and why it works. What I want to talk about is more of a mentality to approaching storyboarding, to approaching writing and doing comedy for animation, and particularly in storyboards, which is having a mentality of invention. And it's something I don't see in a lot of like younger portfolios, even at studios that I've been at, sequences, scripts, animatics I've watched, a lot of movies I get brought on to do punch up on. It's just something I don't see, which is this idea of what you have at your disposal and taking advantage of it to maximum entertainment value and comedy. And especially in something like animation, the reason we can do that better than any other medium is in animation, we have awesome character designs, we have crazy worlds, we have creatures, we have monsters, you have special abilities, superpowers, magic. You want to be able to take advantage of and tap into to exploit for the purposes of comedy and entertainment value. Every moment in an animated movie is an opportunity for comedy, for invention. And my philosophy is always go as far as you can and exploit those things to the maximum ability. That's what separates like good storyboard artists, I think, from great storyboard artists, is when 9 out of 10 people would do something one way, and you're the one person that said, I'm going to use the body in this way that nobody else was thinking about or whatever. People remember that kind of stuff because it opens up all these other opportunities. Anything to add?
No, great.
Good.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean,
thank you. I appreciate it.
It sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but I'm not really sure.
So what I want to talk about is this character from Wish Dragon. So maybe some of you have seen Wish Dragon. I was co-head a story on the film alongside Rad Seacrest, directed, written by Chris Applehans. It's a retelling of the sort of classic Genie, Three Wishes story. Chris knew right away that we were going to have an uphill battle being compared to something like Aladdin. There was a lot of similar elements. In particular, in Aladdin, you have the genie. Right off the bat, Chris had a take on the character that was going to differentiate it from Disney's Aladdin in terms of personality. The genie, he's fun, he wants to have a good time, he's your buddy, he's your best friend, he sings a song, You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me. Our dragon, asshole. He doesn't want to do the job, he doesn't want to help people, he just wants to give them wealth and power and land and gold and then go back to his teapot and not be bothered. So immediately we had a different take on the character. However, what we didn't know and what Chris wasn't sure about at the beginning, and it's something he tasked me with very early on in the film, was how do we differentiate our sort of genie character, our dragon, in terms of the comedy and the physicality and the animation aspect of invention. In Aladdin, the genie would morph into things, would turn into objects, would transform into like celebrities. It's so iconic. Even though we had a different personality, we thought we don't just want to do the same kind of comedy. We don't want to do like poof magic. We don't want him transforming into stuff. The first thing I said was, you know what? We've got this dragon with a super long body. The same way we're treating the personality different and doing the opposite personality of the genie, I said, why don't we do like the opposite? Let's do all physical based stuff. Let's use that body. Let's use that shape to do poses no one's ever seen before, to have him interacting with his body in ways that is inventive and fun. He could make a table with his body and lean on it. So for example, in Aladdin, the genie, again, if he was saying, hey, 3 wishes down, 1 to go, I could see him poofing a chalkboard, has a piece of chalk and crosses 1 wish off. So one of the early gags I did to sort of explore this principle was Long talking to the boy, 1 wish down, 2 to go. He comes in a frame, he goes dunk, dunk, dunk with his body, makes 3 little shapes. His body comes up on the other side, then he pulls his body down, 1 down, 2 to go, and reveals it. So the same kind of gag, the same kind of moment you would see in Aladdin, but portrayed through the unique properties and physicality of our character in a different way. So here it is, just kind of in action. So some of the stuff I'm talking about. So in the top left corner there, like his arm and limbs coming in from all different sides of the screen. That's a way to do magic without being the genie, right? That's totally unique to our character, totally unique to our movie and the design that we had. This wasn't the gag that actually made in the movie, but one thing I wanted to try was get a gag or something in the movie where Long's body was both foreground, middle ground, and background in one shot. So this was an idea I had. I was like, oh, maybe he's talking about the origins of him being in the teapot. So actually looking at it, I would have made his tail bigger in the foreground there. But that was the idea. He's used his tail as like a puppet stand-in for a human. The teapot's on his body in the foreground, and he's farther away in space, like coming out like, and then I came out of the teapot. And he's basically making a whole like stage and doing a stage show with just his body. It's like, that's something no other character could do. And then of course, bottom right is just body chaos. One of the key things I came up with very early on was inventing ways to use the body to help tell the story. And maybe we can reflect his attitude and how frustrated he gets in his body and the poses and the shapes that he creates. And so if any of you have seen the movie, the more frustrated he gets with the boy Din, which happens a lot, the more complicated his shapes could become. So you can see here just kind of demonstrating that as an example. Again, I just started trying to explore like little moments, vignettes that I didn't even know what these moments or scenes would be, but just trying to take advantage of the dragon and the body. Instead of just two characters having an argument, why not use his body? He's holding the boy up by the shirt. He could get into his face, swirling around. I thought, oh, that's a fun way. Maybe we can start using the body to frame Din or frame other elements in a shot, create a frame within a frame. Maybe there's a moment where he's trying to you will just wish for gold. And he could use his body and hypnotize them. Again, trying to tap into the body, the physicality. So here's a bunch of poses from some of the boards. What are poses that are recognizable, but then also unexpected and funny? So in the top right corner, he's getting in the boy's face. The neck could just be growing longer and longer, pointing to his own body. If he's describing himself to the boy, he's like, dude, I'm a dragon. Why not have him create this funny shape? And he's pointing at himself. The bottom left where he's exhausted, that's what I was talking about, where it's somebody hunched over on their knees like a humanoid figure. We understand that pose. How do you do that with a serpentine figure? He uses his body as something to rest on, creating the classic Chinese infinity dragon shape. One funny thing actually that we started discovering, if you notice the one where he's holding the lucky cat, his shoulders are detached. We started doing this in poses, and we had an animator, modeler, rigger, this guy named Rio Rio2, who's sort of a jack of all trades. He did an early anim test based on some of these poses where that happened. And we showed it to a bunch of people because we were like, are people going to notice that his arm's not connected to his body? Everyone had notes and thoughts on other things. Not one person even noticed that was happening. And that was when we were like, all right, I think we're good. I think we can do this. Awesome. One of the things that came up as we were getting ready to go into production on the movie was Chris Appleton said, hey, can you put this package together to show them how you were doing the arms, the animators, and so they understand that philosophy? I was like, yeah, totally. He's like, oh, and also, can you show them how to do the legs? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, the legs. I was like, Long doesn't have legs. He's like, oh, yeah, sorry, we got a note from China. Chinese dragons have legs. So if you could figure out how to, I was like, dude, it took me 10,000 drawings to figure out how to do the arms. What do you mean? He's like, oh, you'll figure it out. Yeah. I didn't. You could see the only one I had was him in the bottom right corner leaning up like a hammock, and I put the legs, because they kept breaking the silhouette. I think there's 2 shots in the movie where he walks. It was one where they're walking down the street and he eats the shrimp chips. I don't want him walking. He's this big flying dragon. It was that's boring to me. It just looks like a human in a mascot suit. I want to come up with funnier stuff. So yeah, if you see his legs in the movie, I didn't figure that out. That wasn't me.
But this is just kind of mess around stuff too. I hurt my ankle playing soccer at some point, and so I just wanted to mess with things and play with a little bit of animation and things like that. This is just me messing around, having fun on my own. I'm keeping kind of things loose and just trying to think what I could do for storyboards, things, and but just having a lot of fun kind of with animation and what you could do, so there's just a lot of stuff that it's just, the medium's fun, we went to soccer heaven. There you go. Right.
Look at how simple and quickly readable these drawings are. It's not a crazy amount of detail. Oftentimes when you add too much detail, it robs the drawing of the life and the funniness of it. Moroni, who I do Storyboard Hotline with, his number one rule for making your storyboards funnier is draw funny.
Yeah.
It sounds silly and it sounds stupid and obvious, but it's just true. If something looks and feels funny, you're already kind of halfway there of getting people to buy into the comedy of it all.
And it's actually funny to draw off model a little bit sometimes. I think on Finding Dory, someone did a really hilarious drawing. I think it was Gerald the seal. It didn't look like any of the other seals at all. They kept taking the seal and making it look like the other seals, and they're like, no, that's not it. And so they just fully modeled a new Gerald to look just ridiculous. He doesn't even, I think, articulate, or he's not even rigged. I think he's just a flat, really weird looking seal, and he just leans forward or something. That's what makes it funny. It's kind of janky. When we're looking at portfolios and stuff, I'm just always kind of looking for, show me funny, but show me what you think is funny.
This is a perfect example when we tell people oh, what should I put in my portfolio? We'll do something personal story. Yeah. It doesn't mean it has to be some emotional, traumatic, it could be,
yeah.
but this is something stupid that happened to Mike, and he made an exaggerated version of it, told a funny little story in 40 drawings, 50 maybe. It's not crazy. Everybody in here laughed.
Yeah.
Everybody, well, I don't know. Maybe it's people like that. When we're at studios, looking at portfolios, it's if you can make us laugh or just do something that's seemingly simple. I can't read that sign. It's so dark. Thank you.
Not everyone's humor is the same. Not everyone's ideas are like come from the same place, and a lot of comedy is very subjective. You know, if we're working on something, there's like a certain group of friends that we all know, and like Josh is one of them, where I'll be like, "Is this funny?" Or like, "Check this out. Like, what do you think about this?" Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it's very helpful. The advice I would give would be start exercising that muscle of identifying the things that you find are very funny. Why are they funny? Maybe looking at like how they're doing it. It might not work for everyone, and your humor may be like a little bit strange or a little bit out of the box, or maybe it doesn't necessarily work with a director and stuff. However, every team is appreciative of someone who comes with like their own point of view and kind of brings that idea.
Having people you can bounce stuff off of and jam with is super, super important. Like if any of you guys follow Storyboard Hotline, you know it's like me and Moroni. He and I will always get together and bat ideas around, and you always get somewhere funnier, or you just unlock other people think about other things differently than you do. Mm-hmm. And it's really important, I think, as you continue in your career, like find the people you connect with, find the people you relate with, and foster those relationships creatively. Yeah. Especially with comedy, like I brainstorm with people all the time, and you bat stuff around, and somebody says, "Oh, but you know, it'd be funnier. This." You can take something that was like maybe a 5 out of 10 and turn it into a 7 or an 8. There's always this moment, I call it the edge, where you're batting something around, funnier, and then somebody will say something, and everyone just goes, "Ugh." And you're like, okay, now you know where the edge of that joke is and where it doesn't work anymore.
It's very vulnerable, right?
Yes.
Like a lot of times I'm like, all right, here's a crap idea, but what about this? And it's like, oh yeah, but then someone will be like, oh, but what about this? And then you just take that bad idea, and it's like, I'm so glad I said that bad idea that someone else might kind of like build upon. Being like a yes and person, you know what I mean? You've heard of yes and before? People have done improv, right? This kind of idea is that you don't cut someone's idea down. You don't want to be too destructive, so don't be a grouch. You know, be a builder, you know, kind of like that yes and attitude. And I think a lot of the times, like, we're there just the plus thing. A script will be very simple. And so if you have a very simple script, you just want to kind of like build on it.
Do you ever get like embarrassed or like a little jealous when someone has a funnier bit than you? Like,
Josh, do you get jealous?
Well, Mike, that happens a lot, right?
Embarrassed? Sure, because like most ideas are crap. He seems to forget.
That's why I say, like, find people that you connect with and relate to, because you just need to be open. Like, that's how you get the better idea. So a lot of times you might throw something out in the room that you're like, okay, this is the dumb version. But you just say it to see if someone else can elevate it. That's part of our job. We have to try. Because when things start going more and more downstream on a production, they get locked. If we feel like we haven't explored and pushed as much as we can, we might be robbing the movie of something special. You might end on something that becomes a key thing in a trailer. And you wouldn't know that unless you push. So yeah, you just have to be vulnerable. You just have to be silly. Don't take yourselves too seriously. Like, just have fun.
Have you ever had a moment when you were pitching your storyboards where no one laughed?
Mike, that's probably happened a lot.
It happens all the time. I was showing Josh this thing that I thought was hilarious, but I pitched it at a time, and I was pitching it to editorial, and they had to work like all weekend to cut it and put it in. And if you ever worked with editorial, they're kind of just how I am. Like right now, they wear all black. They never laugh at anything. And they just like stare at you. And so I was pitching these jokes, and I'd pitch the joke, and I'd look at them, and they're just like straight faced looking at it, and at a certain point, I just started laughing because they weren't laughing. That's kind of like how you know like jokes don't work, which is like a great test.
Do you have any tips for like blending comedy with like action or chase scenes?
Try to layer stuff in the context of what needs to happen in the story. That's a good way to keep your gags in a movie if you're boarding, is if there's a really important line, but you have a really funny gag, do the gag while the character's saying that line and they can't cut it because they can't cut that line. Try to work within the confines of what's necessary of the scene, and try to tap into comedy and humor that raises that elevates it, that puts it forward, so that you're doing multiple things at the same time. Like all those Wish Dragon gags in that whole scene, that was all information that people needed to know. So I tried to find the most entertaining ways to do that. I do a lot of stuff for Illumination, and some of the times they send me stuff that's in like, it hasn't been fully lit and final, but it's like animated, and that's where they're like, hey look, we can't move the camera, but what could a minion do right there that could be funny? And so that's what we call more like surgical comedy. It's like you can't break everything open. Yeah. And sometimes that's good to give yourself like a parameters, because I can't say, well, he should be riding a bike and do a loop. It's like, no. What can he do here? You know? Right. So yeah, it just depends on what point in the production. Yeah, so it depends if it's an original or sequel or like a franchise, obviously. The originals, that is part of what the team is discovering early on. It's like we don't know necessarily what the tone is. is. Wish Dragon's a good example. Like, Chris's sensibilities are much more sincere and emotion. What the advantage of was he knew what every scene, the purpose of every scene was, and the emotional arc, and he and me and Rad Seacrest, who had a story, and to his credit, he was like, what's the most entertaining version of this? And he relied on us to infuse that, and he trusted us. I think it took the best of both, and it kind of found it in the middle. There was one gag I did. It was the only one that got censored. When Din was trying to make him transform into his butler for this party they were going to, I had Long use his tail, and he put it up to his head like a gun and shot it, and the magic went poof, and he materialized as a human. The only one that they said, no. They said, but that's part of it. It's like, where is the line? How far are you going? Their manager's panicking. Mira and Zoe realize the honeymoon's breaking. Rah, 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 rah. All these demons are coming out. Oh no, she looks up. Demons coming out of the roof. Ah, she looks over. Coming out of the column. Cut to a bucket. Water demon comes out. Tunk, gets snagged in the bucket. Tries to get out. Jumps off in the bucket. Bobby's like, you guys gotta hurry up. The honeymoon's breaking. The Snatcher Boys are stealing our fans. Sorry, gotta go, Bobby, bye. And the bucket demon comes in. And there you go.
Can you go back to the Bobby thing? I just want to get a picture.
What did I do? Which Bobby thing?
The one where he's on the phone.
That's the panel you want? Of all, like,
So funny.
that?
Josh, that's what's funny on your boards.
See, sometimes people laugh at things you weren't expecting them to laugh at, and take the laugh.